Hey guys, welcome back to Cyberspace Investigations. Breaking news, it looks like Chinese games are finally being accepted in the West. Look at this. Now, before January 1st, 2020, China was only synonymous with Made in China, which usually means, to us American folks, bad. But now with games like Black Myth Wukong and Genshin Impact, Chinese games are finally being accepted for what they are. A scam. Although it has been historically challenging for Chinese games to become a success in the Western world, Genshin Impact has been a resounding success all around, and gotten a lot of love from American, European, and Asian audiences alike. Now all we have to do is get the Middle East on board and we got world peace at our fingertips. MiHoYo released Genshin Impact in late September 2020. MiHoYo, up to the point of Genshin's release, had been known as a developer of mobile gacha games, most notably Honkai Impact 3rd. Gacha games are a genre of games mostly found in app stores, and they're very popular in East Asia. These games are basically loot box games with a simple style of gameplay and loot boxes you can buy to get weapons, new characters, and other things. Many popular franchises have gacha games, like Dragon Ball Z and Final Fantasy. But most of these games can't really break into mainstream gaming. MiHoYo decided they were going to try and captivate the console and PC gaming audiences with a game that was still a gacha, but a high-quality console PC level experience. What came out of that effort was none other than Genshin Impact, the game that made $50 million in its first 2 weeks. Good lord. But is the game any good? That's what we'll be discussing today. Probably to start off, we better talk about the price point, $0. It's a great deal for a game like this, and with little gating you for the first 20 or so hours, it's a fun time just to try out. The combat is based on elemental abilities with a bunch of different ones that combine in different ways into certain other effects that get applied to enemies. Anemo, wind basically, is the most versatile as it can combine with any other element to make wind attacks fire, water, lightning, you get the idea. Most of the other abilities revolve around picking the right timing and series of abilities to create the perfect status scenario on your foes and your surroundings at the same time to make your attacks even better and more powerful. The system is very deep and not hard to understand, but the level of skill required to put out enough damage for higher level timed challenges is truly enormous. My only complaint with this system is there is never a real explanation of the elemental abilities. Sure, some pop-ups come up during combat, but I'm not looking at those, I'm trying to fight. More so, proficiency in the fighting system comes from experience more than the help from the game. This game gets constant comparisons to Breath of the Wild, and I think that's kinda ridiculous. Genshin is nothing like it, and while it does take a stamina wheel in stride, it makes some changes to the system that makes it different enough to be unique. First off, the stamina wheel is much less forgiving than Breath of the Wild. Cliffs are much sheerer, and the stamina bar is expanded at a much slower rate. It also takes a lot more effort. You get stamina upgrades through animoculuses and geoculuses. These are usually tied to little puzzles you see throughout the world. Some of them are also out in the open. The puzzle difficulty ranges from collecting 3 things in the right place, and some of them are timed challenge rewards. It isn't the greatest system, and I personally like Breath of the Wild's shrines a little more, because of the shrine challenges in that game were much simpler, and the upgrades were more significant. Speaking of shrines, Genshin has a version of those too, in the form of domains. These are pretty much shrines, but some of them really only give you rewards the first time you do them, and some of them give you daily or weekly rewards. Some of these domains are special challenge rooms that can be replayed infinite times each day to get high-level ascension materials, something needed for increasing your character's max levels. To get the rewards, you gotta use original resin, a limited resource that acts as a time gate to getting high-level stuff done. This is probably the most controversial part of the game at the time of this recording, as many have voiced their concerns over how limiting the system is. There are ways to refill it faster, but the devs never gave any way to permanently upgrade it, free or otherwise. This makes it a hassle and somewhat annoying, as to use enough resin for some challenges, you'll have to log in multiple times a day or be playing long enough to let it recharge. I hope they fix this soon, as it's the game's biggest issue. If we're looking at the character selection, it's pretty varied. Each character has a certain elemental aspect that is tied to their abilities. They all have different designs, and playing it as each character feels at least a little different. I currently have 10 characters, and while I haven't played all of them that much, I can say without a doubt MiHoYo is talented at making immense amount of characters work together. But how do you get these characters and these weapons that go with them? The gacha system, or more specifically, the wish system. I'm not going to go too in depth with this, but basically, you spend currency to get wishes, which are loot boxes which you can then get other types of currency, characters, or weapons from. This system is pretty standard for these types of games, but it's pretty light here compared to mobile gachas like Dokkan Battle. Maybe it's because most of the stuff you get from these are major or can be leveled up for free once you get them, I don't know. Now, last but not least, let's cover the story, or at least the prologue, which is the first 5 to 10 hours of the game. Like Breath of the Wild, you can go nearly anywhere here directly from the start. So, if you want to experience the story with no spoilers, skip like 10 seconds to the general synopsis. I'll still be here. With that out of the way, let's talk about the story. It starts off with an epic battle between your two OCs, the Travelers, and this unnamed god or goddess. She kidnaps the opposite OC of the one you choose and casts yours down to Teyvat, the world of Genshin Impact. From there, it's the usual RPG beginnings, helping people, rising in social stature, meeting God, killing God's friend, all in the prologue. Yes, standard anime things, I think. It's more interesting when you get into it. Multiple factions, some political stuff, mythical things, but stuff really heats up after the prologue, but again, I won't be talking about that. The characters in the story are pretty much all characters you can play as in the game, which makes a stronger connection between the player and the game world. Maybe one of the strategies to get players to spend real money. Of course, I wouldn't fall for something like that, but I do appreciate it from a world-building perspective. It seems that Genshin is already set for success, raking in well over its development budget. Clearly, this is something special. It presents a level of deepness not usually seen in gacha games, especially mobile ones. But here's to hoping the updates and expansions are just as good as the main game. Well, that's it for this one. Tune in next week for a very bone-shaking Halloween special.